question is that the amendment be agreed to, and I call the honourable member for Mayo.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. We are living in extraordinary circumstances and at a time of tremendous concern for many in our communities. Not in the living memory of many, if any, Australians have we experienced such a health crisis and an economic crisis in one event. Time is of the essence, and I will not take up too much time of this House, but I think it's important that I briefly speak as a member of the crossbench and also the only member of Centre Alliance to speak on this bill, both here and in the other place. I would first like to commend the government. This is an enormous package of legislation pulled together in a short time. It is comprehensive in outlook, and I would also like to mention the government's fact sheets on the website www.treasury.gov.au/coronavirus. They are detailed and in a clear format, outlining assistance available for individuals, families, retirees and self-funded retirees and veterans. The website also provides information on the early access to limited superannuation, cash flow assistance for small businesses, temporary financial relief for distressed businesses and support for small business investment, and the increase and expansion of the instant tax write-off. I know many people are discovering they no longer have employment, and this is crushing. Many businesses are operating differently or are required to close their doors, and it is my hope that with the support package available, that those doors, the closure of those doors, will be indeed a temporary measure. Sadly, every one of us will be impacted by the coronavirus in some way. As my colleague Senator Sterling Griff said in the other place this morning, if we stick together and with the right support, we will get through this. In the supply bills, we know that there is an extra $22 billion for government to spend as they deem necessary in the coming months. This is, I believe, a sensible measure. As we close borders in many states, returning here to allow government to release more funds will not be an easy thing to arrange. Transparency on this spending, however, is important. I would like to mention that where I think there is a gap of support that needs to be addressed is the need for community wellbeing assistance. Arriving here last night, I had the opportunity to chat to the former member for Indi, Cathy McGowan. Perhaps it is because we are both regional women, but our conversation immediately went to our concerns of how we can lift up our regional communities. Who will keep people connected? And when we look at those that already do this, those who are best providing support to vulnerable people in our community, those based in our community, the answer, I believe, is simple. It is local government. And so I would urge the government to again look at providing financial assistance to our local governments. I know my regional local governments do extraordinary community work. It worked so well during the drought funding, where there was $1 million provided to each local government area, and more recently in the bushfire assistance, again funding directly provided to local government. And like the member for Indi's area, my community has also experienced huge devastation over summer, and this coronavirus is just compounding our loss and devastation. Local government knows who are vulnerable, isolated, and they work closely with small NGOs if they are not providing the service delivery themselves, such as CHISP and social wellbeing programs. And I'm deeply concerned that without the community wellbeing support that will need to be delivered in different ways than we currently do, we will lose more people to mental health issues exacerbated by loneliness and isolation than potentially coronavirus. The singing on the balconies that we saw from Italy, that lifted everyone's spirits and built solidarity and camaraderie, was driven by their local government network, and we need to support ours to create similar initiatives. We have been through so much. Bushfires on the back of drought. And so I have a call to action for my Mayo community, and that is we all need to do random acts of kindness, phone calls to elderly. Join a group on Facebook. There's just one that I know of in our community called Caremongering Adelaide Hills, and these Facebook groups are spreading all across our community. And this will be what will get us through. Assist over the phone an elderly person on how they can make Facebook calls, how they can talk to each other, talk to them about Zoom, get them on Facebook or other social media platforms where they can share and connect and still have video conferencing calls with their grandchild that they can't see at the moment. I'd like to say thank you to our healthcare workers, the doctors, the nurses, the teachers, the childcare workers, the supermarket workers, the truck drivers, the bus drivers. They are all working so hard in our community. You are all keeping Australia going, and we are all indebted to you for your service. And can I ask all Australians to please be kind to the Centrelink operators, the people who answer your phone calls when you're ringing them and you're calling your bank. And also I'd like to give a shout out to my staff. My staff, the phone calls started very early this morning, as I'm sure they have in every member's office. We understand many people are deeply, deeply stressed, and we want to help every one of you. But please, just remember they are humans too. And I know my staff are doing an extraordinary job. I'd also like to make the point that we need to care for our young people. Now, while young people may not be susceptible from a health perspective, as susceptible as older people to coronavirus and certainly complications from coronavirus, they are vulnerable in other ways. And I'm particularly concerned about young people and disruption to their education, whether that be high school or indeed at university, and they are incredibly vulnerable in their mental health, and we need to make sure that we can still support them. You know, they are social beings, and we need to make sure that they are with us for generations. As a student of history, I've recently reflected on how decision makers and the community responded to the Spanish flu pandemic between 1918 and December 1920. It was actually called the Spanish influenza because Spain was the only country that was actually reporting on the deaths and giving information. It actually started in Kansas. In another century, students will judge us on the decisions we make today, and in the near future, how we support each other and our most vulnerable. And it is my great hope that we will be looked upon in a favourable light. We must remember at every turn we are a community and we are all in this together. I commend this bill to the House.